I was teaching storytelling, and one of the people there said, "This has never worked. It actually never worked in a business context. Stories don't work." And I said, "Okay, tell me how." And she said, "Well, for example," I said, "What do you do?" She said, "I work in finance, in the financial functions." I said, "Okay, so what's your job?" She said, "Well, I have to chase everybody to give me their expenses so that I can then collate them and hand them to the CFO so the CFO can make reports." Amazing. All right, good. Does anything ever go wrong? And she said, "Yeah, one of the managers is always late." And I said, "Okay, so what have you said?" I said, "Don't be late." I said, "Okay, how has that worked for you?" She said, "He's still always late." I said, "Okay, have you ever worked in a place where you had the same thing happen?" She said, "Yeah, the last company I worked at, there was a manager there who was always late." I said, "What happened to him?" She said, "Got fired." I said, "Why?" Because he was late, and therefore the CFO was late, and the CFO looked like a moron in front of the board, and they tracked down who it was that made him late, and it was him. So he got fired. I said, "Have you told this manager that story?" She said, "No, do you think it'll work?" I was like, "It's worth a try." And she told him that story. And she got in contact with me 3 weeks later and said, "Oh, it's worked a charm so far. Everything's been done a day early. And it's all been submitted properly on time, if not early where possible." And I said, "Isn't there a difference between you should do this because this could happen, or you should do this because I've seen this happen?" One is an example or an anecdote. The other one is a story, and it works. Whether it was true or not doesn't matter. The point is that it can work really, really well. Now, we don't want to lie about anything about our products or anything like that, but the way we came up with the idea, why not? Like, enjoy the story. When we started our company, I could say, yep, we went out and we decided to find some tea, and we decided to try market stalls. Okay, that's kind of engaging. But actually what happened was we had both quit our jobs. We were down to our last pennies. The only thing we had to eat in the house were giant bags of pasta and Maggi cubes to be able to make a sauce, and some tins of tuna. So we had Maggi cube tuna pasta for like 3 weeks. That was all we could eat. And then we thought to ourselves, all right, we've got to do something here. So we borrowed £1,000 from a number of different friends, £1,000 total, and we put in our first tea order, and we went out and had a really good dinner because we hadn't eaten anything but Maggi cubes and pasta and tuna for like 3 weeks. So we went out, we always end up going for dim sum whenever we get money, which is always nice. So we had a really good dinner, and then we went out the next day and started selling tea, and it worked. One, you could care, but you really couldn't. Two, I add the different details that make you think something different about me, feel something about the story, and then possibly if I had added some type of call to action, do something afterwards. And that's ultimately what you're aiming to do. Yeah? So when you think of your story, you sit there and you think, what do you want people to think about this story? Do they want to think, oh, this is another kid who just really, really wants to create something really cool? Or is it solving a problem? What is that problem? Do I experience that problem? Have I ever experienced that problem? And that's what we want to get to.